This is the Compass Podcast, where we disrupt the everyday with glimpses of the divine. We all go through periods where we feel like God is distant. What do we do when we don't feel #blessed? Kate Bowler and Jessica Richie wrote The Lives We Actually Have, a little prayer book offering creative, faith-based blessings that help to connect with a sense of gratitude and hope in the midst of our real, messy lives. Want to know what we mean? We have a blessing just for you from Kate Bowler, who is the author of the New York Times bestseller Everything Happens for a Reason. Kate is the host of the popular podcast Everything Happens. She's also a professor at Duke University, where she taught our friend Ryan Dunn all about Christian history.
Here's a little blessing for the gift of doubt. I long for understanding, but life is full of unanswered questions. Oh God, reveal to me what I need to know now. And as for the rest, teach me how to live with so much uncertainty. Blessed are we who come to you in the discomfort of our doubt, for we trust that our honest unknowing is a truer and better prayer than bootstrapping efforts at certainty. Blessed are we, receiving the gift of doubt, for we trust that it is a doorway, freeing us to become all that we could not otherwise have known.
Michelle, are you the kind of person who thinks to offer a blessing when you're feeling grouchy or when you feel like your body is your enemy?
I have to be honest, I don't always remember to be that positive. I just sometimes get bogged down with that negativity, but I should start using this more often, especially since these folks have created such amazing content.
Yeah. I tend to look for the gratitude kind of in the same situation, like when things are going well, but it's like when I'm grouchy like that, I'm not thinking about offering a blessing. So I really wanted to know what prompted these prayers. And thankfully, I got to sit with the co-author of The Lives We Actually Have, Jessica Richie, and she gave me the scoop on the inspiration for these blessings, and then also how this spiritual practice has impacted her life, and of course, a few other tidbits of blessing. Well, let's meet Jessica Richie, the co-author of the New York Times bestseller Good Enough. She is also the executive director of the Everything Happens project at Duke Divinity School, and the executive producer of the Everything Happens podcast. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us on the Compass podcast. We're going to have this question of initiation. I'm going to throw it at you. How goes it with your soul today?
Oh, thanks for asking, Ryan, and thanks for chatting with me today.
You bet.
I think the way that I would describe my soul today is weary. I feel like the beginning of the year adds so much unnecessary but pressure, we're resting, we're spending time with family, we're enjoying, and then all of a sudden January is this like full on sprint. So I feel the cost of that. I felt rested, and now I feel like that like pylon feeling, where you're like, oh Lord, how much can my shoulders bear? So I think I feel weary, but simultaneously always like joyful and entertained and full. I think just that flip side of the full coin is the weight of it all.
Yeah. Well, you've helped to pen this book of blessings, and one of them actually speaks to probably the situation that you're feeling right now, where it's like you've been challenged to go from 0 to 60 in nanoseconds. When situations like that come up, are you pulling back to your own book, or do you find that you have some new words that come to mind when you start to think about how you might, call a blessing into that moment?
Yeah, I think that speaks so much to what our heart for this book is that we needed richer, thicker theological language for these moments that don't seem like they would go on like a Precious Moments plaque, or that you find at like, I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and we had a Mardel's down the street. I know that's like a local, like Texas and Colorado might be the only places, but find on a Mardel's Christian t-shirt is okay. Like these moments of feeling weighted, freighted by maybe even important spiritual work. So we wanted to craft better words, better prayers for this moment when we didn't feel especially spiritual or especially holy or especially cheerful. maybe God can be found in and among our garbage days, in and among our tired days, in and among our too full days, in and among our like grief-filled days. And maybe especially that's what the work of being a person that's interested in who Jesus is about, is finding and maybe putting on goggles that like adjust our lens a little bit to imagine God in this here now. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned language there. That can lead us down a whole rabbit hole. But did you find in writing this book that you were being deliberate about planting in some of the, I guess, religious-y type words or spiritual words?
I think if anything, we were combing them out.
Okay.
As somebody who, I grew up in the church and going to Sunday school and going to Wednesday night Bible study and going to youth group, I find that sometimes my spiritual language feels too practiced and it loses its meaning because it's felt so repeated. And so I think in this case, in the case of these blessings, we were trying to find ways, like fresh ways to describe these moments where we needed God to just intervene, God to be present, God to sit with us, that didn't feel as well worn maybe as some of our the like spiritual language of our childhood.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. It can feel a little bit inauthentic maybe, or impersonal when you're just stealing words from the past. I don't know.
That's right. Or you're like calling it in a little bit, you know, like I'm going to just phone this one. And I grew up in evangelical land and a lot of like prayers that just came to you. And so I find such comfort in some of the liturgy of some tradition, like some older traditions. And I think the reason I find that, and I feel like people maybe that grew up in liturgical traditions feel the opposite. They feel so much freedom in being able to just talk to God how they need to express. But for me, I really enjoyed the ability to read a prayer out loud, knowing, trusting that there is a cloud of believers, this like whole like chorus of people that have believed these words before me for thousands of years, and I can just kind of fold myself into that. So I think that was one of my hopes for this book, was that even on days where people didn't believe it, even on days when reaching for a prayer felt too hard, too forced, they didn't have the words, that maybe they could find themselves like nestled in one of these prayers that other people might be praying with them, alongside them, before them, over them too. Yeah.
Well, so there in part is part of your motivation for writing this book, but why now?
Yeah. So Kate and I started writing these blessings before the pandemic. It was like December 2019, before everybody imagined that their lives would be shrunk.
Our halcyon days.
That's right.
Everything's fine.
Who were we, Ryan? Who were we before then? And it was for similar reasons. We wanted better ways to bless our actual days. We wanted God to show up on a regular, boring Tuesday just as much as God shows up on our highest days where we say, like, God is so good, and on our lowest days when we say, like, God help me, God I need you. Like, what does it look like for God to be just infused in it all? And what we didn't realize was how much we actually needed this language of blessing throughout the pandemic, throughout these fear-inducing, uncertain days where we needed God to show up on our Tuesdays, on our tear-stained pillows, and on our, like, joyful reuniting with the people that we love so much. Like those kind of moments, like every single step of the spectrum, we wanted language for those kind of prayers.
And in the process of pulling these all together, did you find that there were some that were a little bit hit or miss? Like, particularly, were there some that you were like, oh my gosh, this is just what I needed, and I'm going back to it again and again?
Kate and I recently got the chance to read it for the audiobook version of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun. The book process is like you write it a year before it releases. So by the time we're recording an audiobook for it or releasing it, like we're already working on like the project for next year or something.
Yeah.
So it is such a nice chance to go back. And I think Kate and I were both surprised by how moved we were, not because we're like particularly like, wow, look at the writing that we can do. No, by how the prayers felt still true, by how they felt like, wow, I feel so like that is exactly what I need. That is the feeling that I'm still feeling. That is the space where I really am hoping that God shows up. We have one in there that like I just get teary just thinking about it, because we wrote one for our mournful days, and what we had in mind was somebody to read it like before a funeral or before like during a viewing or something where, and I think I'm so moved by how people have been using our words and our prayers in these like painful moments when they're like seeking and grappling for something, and the hope of how this will just continue to be useful to people as just like this little coffee table prayer book is what we kind of hope. Like just something you just like flip through, grab, and be like, this is what I need today. Yeah.
Well, each one of them contains a blessed are we when kind of statement. Actually, most of them contain several, but those can almost become kind of mantras, because those are what stick out, at least having gone through the book. Those have what stuck out to me. And so when I do find myself in those moments, it becomes a way of almost reframing a beatitude and saying, you know, instead of blessed am I when I'm at the end of my rope, you know, blessed am I when I don't know what to do next. Blessed am I when I'm having a curmudgeonly day or a frustrated day. And in the book's intro, you all mentioned that these kinds of blessings can be a form of placement and putting things in perspective. So do you find yourself now using these blessings to reorient your perspective? Was that a natural process for you before, or is it something that's been kind of kicked up by the whole book writing process? Sure.
That language of spiritual placement is from Dr. Stephen Chapman, who, did you have him while you were at Duke?
No, I did attend a lecture with him, but no, he was not one of my professors.
Wonderful Old Testament professor who has this, who says that blessing, I think in American culture, we imagine that to be blessed is like the hashtag that everybody uses to brag. It's like a humble brag of like, oh, blessed, hashtag vacation, hashtag like, look at my perfect family all smiling at the camera at once. And what Stephen Chapman talks about is blessing's actually a spiritual placement. It's a way of speaking true things about God and us and God's intervention in our actual everyday lives. And I think for me, the Beatitudes, which is the passage on the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are, in the Eugene Peterson version, blessed are those at the end of their rope, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. These ideas of Jesus turning blessing, what does it mean to be blessed, completely on its head, of like, when I'm grieving, when I'm mourning, I do not feel hashtag blessed. Like that's not the picture I'm going to put on Instagram, but maybe there is a upside down blessing of the presence of God who knows our tears, who counts them, who bottles them up. Maybe there is a blessing in this moment of brokenness, of spiritual emptiness, of hopelessness, of despair that might be found if we have that language. Like, blessed are we here now because we are the children of God. We are blessed. We are blessed with God's presence in all things.
So if we are blessed with God's presence in all things, do you find yourself going back to these prayers and in all things?
I do. I think the way that I use them most practically is praying for other people, or offering them to other people. I think this language of blessing, and this practice of blessing has become something that I'm doing as a spiritual practice. So whether it's returning to the ones that we've written or writing new ones, like I I got to write a blessing for my sister at her wedding, and got to like pray it over them as the new couple before. And I recently lost my dog, and that was so sad. And it got me thinking of like, what does it mean to be blessed in this kind of really specific grief that really only I'm affected by, you know? So this language of blessing has really infiltrated my spiritual practice when it comes to loving and praying for other people, like genuinely praying for them, not just being like praying for you, like, no, like sitting there and offering them a blessing that I know to be true and a little bit more nuanced than maybe Instagram might show.
Right. Do you find yourself now kind of being a compulsive blesser?
I think I don't want to be the kind of person that I think I don't want to be the person that people are like, okay, enough with that, Jessica, you know. Yeah. But I always think that, like, I always, like, when somebody's going through something hard, I always, like, I don't know, is this a cultural thing? Is this a regional thing? But I always say blessings on your forehead. And I don't know why or where that came from, but I have always said that, like, just blessings on your forehead. Like, it just makes me want to, like, anoint people with, like, hope and courage and, like, my heart meets your heart kind of support. So I think I do want to be a blesser. Like, I want to be the kind of person who blesses and when I say bless, like, opens my imagination for how God could be present in this moment, with this circumstance, with this weariness, with this grief, with this new marriage, whatever it might be.
Well, you've mentioned what's coming next. What are you working on next? Is there going to be like a volume 2?
Kate is working on a volume 2 of some blessings, which is really fun. And the thing that we're working on together right now is some new podcast episodes, which we're big.
Yay.
We're big.
Podcasts are great.
Podcast people. We're interviewing some really amazing people this season. We just talked to, next week we're talking to Mary Louise Kelly, she's the anchor for All Things Considered on NPR, and about aging and aging out of the people who need you, who you built your life around. So what does it mean to watch your kids grow up, and what does it mean to say goodbye to your parents, and how do relationships change over time, and what does it mean to enter into this like act 3 of life that you didn't quite expect to have to refine yourself again at this point. So we're just having some really rich conversations that help inform our language. And then at the end of every podcast, Kate and I put our brains together and write another blessing that came out of that podcast conversation. So this act of blessing is really, in every iteration, has been really informative to us.
Wow. So coming out of this, are you going to write a blessing for when you are a podcast guest?
When I am on a podcast, blessed are sound concerns and and hoping and praying that my dog is quiet in the next room. That's right. Right.
Well, hey, speaking of all that stuff, of everything going on there, where is a place to pick up on all this online?
Yeah, you can go to, it's available for sale everywhere, starting on Valentine's Day, and you can go to katebowler.com/blessingsbook to get it. And Ryan, actually, I would love to read one of them for your people.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
If that's a good way to do this. So the one I picked out, let's see. Yeah, this one. The one I picked out is A Blessing for Stretching Your Heart. God, my life has too many things. Awful, lovely, full, shockingly incomplete. Will you help me to learn to live with a greater capacity for this? Living in the tension between a life that has worked out and one that has gone to hell in every handbasket. Let today be a divine exercise of yes and. Yes, I have so much to be thankful for, and this hasn't turned out like I thought it would. Yes, I feel moments of joy, and I have lost more than I thought I could live without. Yes, I want to make the most of today, and my body keeps breaking. Yes, I am hopeful, and this is daunting. Yes, I am trying to be brave and I feel so afraid. So bless me, trying to live in between those two words, yes and. May I understand this is where the real work of life is found, where it takes great courage to live, where grief can strip me to the studs and love can remake me once again, where my heart can be both broken and keep on beating, never sorry to have broken it all. Yes, and. Make me capable of great joy, great love, great risk, even fear, as you expand my heart with this yes and today. Amen.
Amen and amen.
Thanks for talking with us. The Compass podcast is brought to you by United Methodist Communications. If Compass is meaningful for you, then check out another episode.
Yeah, if you like this one, then you probably want to check out our original conversation with Kate Bowler. It was one of our first actual episodes, and we re-released it in June of 2022. It's called Does Everything Happen for a Reason? Or another related oldie but goodie was our chat with Caitlin Curtis. That's called Finding the Divine in the Everyday, and that was re-released in July of 2022. And while you're listening, leave a rating and or a review. We'd appreciate that so much. Compass comes out every other Wednesday, so we're going to chat at you in a couple weeks. Peace.